I'd like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called. Notice of the meeting, Opens Meeting Act, has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Catherine Sells, Dr. Buddy Bonner, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick, Sheila Taylor. We'll now convene into closed session as authorized by Texas Government Code Section 551, specifically 551.071, 072, 074, and 079. Time is 6:02 p.m. We'll now convene into open session. The time is 7:01 p.m. Please join us as the students from Flowermount Elementary School lead us in the pledges. Joy Thomas for the U.S. Pledge and Carter Dixon for the Texas Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, hey, come on back up here. All right, here's some fun facts about Joy. Joy enjoys art, her contemporary dance class, and having a New Year's birth date. Joy wants to be a second-grade teacher when she grows up, because this has been her very best year in school so far. This is her first year in LISD, previously attended private school. Mrs. Kinder is her favorite teacher because she comforts Joy in her new school, and she lets the class do fun things. Fun facts about Carter. He enjoys playing sports and spending time with his family. When he grows up, he wants to be a soldier. Mrs. Mansfield is his favorite teacher because she is nice and she teaches fun facts and stuff. And we'd like to recognize the parents as well. Thank you very much. Welcome to all. The Lewisville ISD Board of Trustees meets monthly to receive reports from staff and take action on recommendations from the superintendent. The board receives the agenda and all supporting documentation 10 days in advance of these regular meetings, which allows us to ask and receive answers to many of our questions. The board also meets in regularly scheduled workshops and work sessions where staff discussions and presentations are given for many of the agenda items. This protocol means lengthy discussions or a litany of questions on every agenda item is often not necessary, and as a board,
Flowermount High School girls cross country team dominated the UIL State 6A cross country meet to claim the state championship.
and as a board, we should have appropriate knowledge and preparation for responses regarding the content of our meeting tonight. Furthermore, we ask all those in attendance to conduct themselves respectfully at all times during the meeting. Any outbursts or disruptive behaviors may result in the removal from the board meeting. Chief Communications Officer Amanda Brim will now share with us this month's recognition and student spotlight. Thank you, Amanda.
Flowermount High School girls cross country team dominated the UIL State 6A cross country meet to claim the state championship title for the third year in a row. With a combined team score of 42 points, the Lady Jags produced the top 3 medalists to sweep the podium, with junior twin sisters Nicole and Samantha Humphreys both earning the individual state title after identical times in a photo finish, and sophomore Alexandra Fox taking the bronze. The team was led by juniors Nicole and Samantha Humphreys, first place with a 17-minute, 36-second time. Sophomore Alexandra Fox, third place, 17 minutes, 48 seconds. Junior Natalie Spanger, 17th place with 18 minutes, 56 seconds. Sophomore Ava Cole with 19:04. Junior Elizabeth Henry, 44th place with a 20-minute, 1-second time. And freshman Annalise Murray, 72nd place with a 20-minute, 45-second finish. Congratulations, Lady Jags. LISD is proud of you. Most recently, the Texas Public Risk Management Association
Fox, she's sick, but those are our championship girls. So thank you, ladies. Yes, parents, please stand up as well, and thank you for your support.
presented Lewisville ISD's Safety and Security Department with the Risk Management Achievement Award for LISD's Elementary Rover Patrol Program, where law enforcement partners provide uniformed officers in marked vehicles to monitor elementary campuses. In addition to the Rover program, the district also added weekly perimeter checks, a tip line for elementary families, and strict procedures for all individuals using the doorbell system at the entry of all district facilities. Lewisville ISD is grateful for its safety and security team and local law enforcement partners for continually working together to ensure students and staff are safe.
Hello, Matthew Garrett, Director of Safety and Security. Really proud of this program, and thank you to leadership team and the board for the support on this, as well as our public safety partners. It's been, when we got the green light to do this program this summer, we threw this together very quickly, and we had, I think, 5 different jurisdiction interlocal agreements that had to be executed and signed. The board worked through all those challenges along with our city councils that we worked with, and overall it's successful. The schools, the elementary schools see uniform presence around the schools checking doors, the kids see them and play with them, the parents see them, and ultimately great success, and thank you so much for that support. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And Jeff.
The Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada awarded LISD the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, an award that recognizes districts that have met the program's high standards for financial reporting and accountability. The district received the award for its 2021 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which is a document to inform parents and community stakeholders about the financial and economic state of the district. The report was judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. This Certificate of Excellence is also the highest achievement in governmental accounting and financial reporting, which is a significant accomplishment by the district and its finance team.
Next, we'll receive our update from Dr. Rapp.
All right, well, it's been an exciting fall, and so we're going to close this fall semester up with a wrap rundown December style. So let's see what we've got here. First, we're going to focus, of course, on our 3 C's that are the focus of our school district for this school year. I'm going to start with an update related to connection. We know right now that we are so proud of the Adopt an Angel program that is going on in the school district. We're thankful to the leadership of our Lewisville High School student leaders and Miss Allison Stamey, and for all the schools and our community on how they're responding to meet the needs of so many children this holiday and Christmas season. We do still have a need in order to help provide for the children that are on our Adopt an Angel list. And so at this time, if anybody who's out in the audience or listening to us online would still be willing to donate, we're not adopting angels, but we are taking donations in order to be able to provide gifts. And we just, again, appreciate our community in supporting the kids in our schools that are on this Adopt an Angel list for this holiday season. As far as connection with staff, you all know that one of the things that I love doing right now is lunch with Lori. I've got the very last one of this fall coming up tomorrow at Griffin, and I visited Heritage and Donald right as we were going on break and coming back from break. And then I'm looking forward to doing a lunch with Lori at our high schools, which takes quite a bit of time because those high school lunches last a really long time. But I'm enjoying getting to hear from our staff and getting to listen to anything that they want me to know about, along with any questions that they may want to ask me to. And then we recently went out and provided breakfast for our bus drivers. We were proud to do that after I got hired in February, and we're going to be doing that twice a year. Although with what we have going on in the spring for National Bus Driver Appreciation, we may try to do a take-home for them as well. But it is a great time. It will fill your heart with great joy to be out at our 3 bus barns with our bus drivers that get on the road so early in the morning, and that's a couple of them that you see in the picture there. And then I had a meeting with our first brand ambassador group, which that's our internal staff group. There were 51 attendees, and we discussed legislative priorities and included teaching for them on how recapture impacts the school district. As far as my connection with students this fall, as I've talked about, I had my first round of elementary and middle school student advisory groups. You see a couple of those pictures on the screen there. I got some good feedback about our student survey that we ask our students to complete every spring, and they'll be looking at that again when we meet in February. We talked about student leadership opportunities they learned from our high school student leaders who taught them about leadership and also taught them about pride in each one of our feeder patterns, and gave them advice on what it means to be a student leader. And then, of course, I got a lot of good feedback about lunch that comes at a good time as we have our child nutrition update this evening as well. And then connection with family, we tried for the first time our key communicator group. We were able to have 46 attendees for that in the fall. We discussed legislative priorities with that group as well about communicating about important issues that are going on in the district. And 2 of their first teach pieces were about recapture and how that impacts our district, helping our community members understand that that is a significant obstacle that we face. And we talked about student accountability. And of course, you all will hear even more accountability from Dr. Fitzhugh later on this evening as well. And then I did the very first ever supper with the superintendent. The target audience there was parents of students who were in kinder through 2nd grade, and really helping them see about all of the opportunities that we have in our school district. We met at Tech West, and just getting to see that facility when you don't yet have high school on the horizon was a great learning experience as well. We, of course, as we all know, sitting here right now, have our legislative day scheduled for Wednesday. We're going to talk more about our legislative priorities coming up later on in the agenda, but we look forward as a team, I know, to seeing our elected officials and talking through our legislative priorities, and I'll talk more about that format during the legislative update. When it comes to communication, just continued update on those newsletters. Again, I'm so thankful to our community that continues to stay informed through both the report and our staff with the wrap-up. And our November open rates were really strong. For our wrap-up with staff, the top clicks included calendar survey, along with the community, adopt an angel with the community, and then actually the legislative contacts were one of the top clicks in the community newsletter as well. And then when it comes to culture, just a few quick story highlights we have on our website right now for people to be able to read about our Tech East graphic design students who brought poetry to life in a partnership with Kamey Elementary. We've got a great story online about a Homestead Elementary student who received a trip to Disney World from Make-A-Wish, and those type of experiences are so great to get to be a part of when we see those awarded to students. And then we also have a story on our website about a legacy of service when we celebrated our Substitute Educators Day with the story of our full-time LLC sub, John Campbell. And I'd love for people to go online and read those stories and more at lisd.net/stories. We also, with the communications team, have launched on December the 8th the LISD Chronicles. And I know that David Zamarripa has worked hard in communications, gathering so many great stories and information that help us understand better the history of our school district, the traditions of our school district as told by the people who helped create them. And so we've got the origins that just recently released with the pilot episode on the high school's rowdy crowd, and it starts out saying, we are more than a pep club. And if you haven't watched it, I highly encourage you to. More than 6,000 people have viewed the premiere episode so far. And I would say to you all, as I get a chance to interact with superintendents from other school districts, one thing that really is a hallmark of our district is our pride in tradition that we have and how our schools were founded and the stories that make them up. And you don't see that everywhere that you go with large districts our size. And so I'm really proud of what the communications team and Mr. Zamarripa have put together. In our Recognize Someone, we're up to over 1,200 that have been submitted this first semester. You can see campuses and people sharing and celebrating the Recognize Someones. I do want to read a couple this evening. Tonight I want to read one about an aide at Hedrick Middle School. Her name is Miss Parr. Miss Parr is a fantastic paraprofessional. She is a math whiz and thrives on helping students succeed in her assigned math classes. She also provides one-on-one tutoring by request from students or staff. Elizabeth also speaks Hakka Chin, so she is invaluable when we need to communicate with parents of our large student population from Myanmar. She has come to the rescue many times this year to relay important information. We're so thankful for Miss Parr. And then for a teacher at Griffin Middle School, Mrs. Brim. Mrs. Brim is the most thoughtful colleague and teacher I have ever had the privilege to work with. Her commitment to students is undeniable as she makes sure every need of every student is met with differentiated assignments. Mrs. Brim finds the good part of everything, making sure her students know that she believes they can and they will be successful. Outside of work hours, Mrs. Brim is thoughtful too, offering to pick up food or other items for a sick colleague. She is simply the best in all caps. I'm so proud of our Recognize Someone program. I continue to share those stories far and wide, and I encourage everybody to reach out and recognize someone in our school district for the great work that they're doing. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to the new year. It's been a great fall semester, and I'm so proud of our departments and the campuses and our staff and students for this fall.
Thank you, Dr. Rapp. And the video for LHS was good to know that being a bonehead at LHS is not a derogatory comment. It's actually something that's got a lot of history to it and how it got there, and the dog bones and everything. It was really a nice story, and I appreciate you all putting together. The next section is for LISD stakeholders. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees must fill out a speaker's card prior to the start of the meeting. Please know speakers who did not complete all sections of the speaker card will not be invited to the podium to speak, but can contact the board with comments or concerns through the LISD website, www.lisd.net/board, where you can find our contact information. Speakers will be divided into two groups. First, LISD stakeholders will be given this opportunity to speak, followed by non-stakeholders. We are working to develop additional procedures for public comment and will post those to the district webpage prior to the January meeting. Lewisville ISD stakeholders, meaning current students, parents, employees, and residents of Lewisville ISD, will have a maximum of 3 minutes for each of their presentations. An individual status as stakeholders has been determined based on the review of the public comment card, and that must be submitted by each speaker prior to the start of the board meeting. The board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda. Each speaker will have received a written follow-up from the district in the next 3 business days. The board and district administration values the feedback shared during this time of the meeting, and we are grateful for the continued partnership between LISD and the families and communities that we support. For each speaker, please state your name and address. Ashley Jones. Ashley Jones chooses not to speak. Christina Whitlock. Ms. Whitlock, would you give us your name and address, please? Thank you.
Whitlock. I'm at 2405 Magnolia Leaf in Flower Mound. So mostly positive. I'm a proud LISD parent of 2 kids, one in Wellington Elementary and one in in Forestwood Middle School, sorry. I'm not used to speaking in front of so many people. We moved to LISD in 2008 from another state, and we had the opportunity of, basically comparing 2 different schools, and we've been pleasantly impressed with all the offerings that LISD has and all the different tweaks to the curriculum with the Spanish program and STEM, et cetera. And I'm really grateful because my main priority is that my children are challenged. I went to school in Fort Worth ISD, and I felt that I was underserved as a student and was not prepared for college. So my main concern as a parent is that my kids get the full spectrum of education that they're afforded to them and are challenged in whatever work they do. I'm also trying to grow adults who are outstanding members of society and contributing. So there is a growing concern with people like me who are really concerned about our children's education, that there are outside people from outside our district who are speaking and having some sort of say in information that is not really accurate. They don't have firsthand knowledge of what is going on in schools. I have 2 kids in the schools who speak very openly with me what's going on in the schools. And I'm just really concerned that these outside players who are coming into different districts and spreading misinformation are going to have some sort of change. And I'm a working parent. I work all day. My free time is spent with my kids, tutoring, et cetera, extracurriculars. I want everyone to know that we parents are concerned about this affecting our children who are in the LISD district and ensuring that our curriculum is not affected by people who do not know the full story, do not know what's going on in the schools. And I am very pleased with the additional communications going out from the district. I just want to support any more communications. How can we prevent misinformation and ensuring that our teachers, our staff, our administration is supported and that my kids are getting the education that they need? And that's it.
Thank you very much. Come on to speak. Our last speaker, Miss Jennifer Perry. Hi, Miss Perry.
Hello. My name is Jennifer, and I live at 3404 Brighton Court in Highland Village. Tonight, I just wanted to shine a little spotlight on Lamar Middle School. From the teachers to the staff, the administration, and even the students have just been a blessing in my family's life. I'm a proud public education parent, and my children are thriving. I have a 6th grader at Lamar and an 8th grader, and every day they want to go to school. and I am so grateful for that. And I know that's because of the teachers and the staff at Lamar, how they nurture and love and support and encourage them. So tonight, it may not seem like a lot, but I just really wanted to thank them and thank you guys for your part in that, because without your support and those teachers and that staff, my children would not be thriving. And the friend group and the people I know just love Lamar. We've all had such great experiences. And even when there's hard conversations that need to be had, the administration is so open and they're always willing to listen. And I really feel like we're a family. And coming from a place where I don't have any family here, they truly are an extension of our family with their support and encouragement. So I just wanted to shine a light on them, to thank them publicly for all they do, and you guys as well. So thank you. I love LISD, and I'm grateful to be a parent in this amazing district.
Thank you. Appreciate your support, and thanks for the work you do as well. All right, this next section is for non-stakeholder speakers. Non-stakeholders will have 1 minute for their presentations. Again, the board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda. For this period, I believe we have no speakers, so we'll move into the we'll now conduct a public hearing on the financial integrity rating system of Texas. Ms. Maloney.
Thank you, President Miller, Dr. Rapp, and members of the board. Tonight is the 2021-2022 report for the school year 2020-21 data for the financial integrity rating system of Texas. Just a reminder that this report is a year in arrears. The 21-22 report is for that 2021 school year. It is not connected in any way to the audit that we'll be reviewing later on this evening, which is for the 21-22 school year. We're currently in the 22-23 school year, and so that is 2 years removed almost from the fiscal year close that we're reporting on this evening. So what is Schools First? It's the state school financial accountability rating. It ensures that Texas public schools are held accountable for the quality of their financial management practices and that there's always continuous improvement. It's designed to encourage public schools to better manage their financial resources to provide the maximum allocation possible for direct instructional purposes. And we are required to hold a public meeting to present the financial rating. It is required to be published in the newspaper, and there is the evidence of when that was done in our periodicals here in the district. And for the determination of the Schools First rating for the first 4 indicators, we'll talk about in a little bit. If you fail any of those critical indicators, you receive an F, and then the rest of the indicators have applicable points, and so you get a letter grade based on your points. The district did have 96, we had a numerical score of 96, and the rating ended up as an 81 due to a reporting error, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So the different types of indicators, 1 through 4, are critical indicators. They are pass-fail. 6 through 14 are solvency indicators, and 15 through 20 are competency indicators. We did have to file an appeal for the clerical error in our audit submission. Although we had a score of 96, 15 points were deducted due to that error. So in each of these, we'll go through them very, very quickly. The questions are designed to get a yes answer and sometimes can be a little bit confusing. The first one was the audit filed within 30 days of the TEA deadline. Yes with an asterisk on that due to what we've already talked about. Did the district receive an unmodified opinion? That is the highest opinion possible. In other words, a clean audit. We did, and we did in the prior year as well, and we will be reporting this evening in our financial audit that we'll receive one yet again. Indicator 3 is to make sure that you're in compliance with your debt service payments at fiscal year end. Again, that is a yes, and will in the future will also be a yes. Indicator 4 is to make sure that you're making timely payments to the Texas Teacher Retirement System, the TWC, and the IRS, and any other government agencies, and we make those payments on time and have in the past and will in the future. Indicator 5 is not being scored. It hasn't been scored for the past couple of years due to the issues. It has to do with the net position of the district and the net pension liability that we're required to carry, and that'll be a part of our audit presentation this evening, causes some issues for districts across the state for that. So that indicator was not scored last year, and it's not being scored this year. For indicator number 6 was the average change in assigned and unassigned fund balance over 3 years, less than 25% decrease, or did the current year's assigned and unassigned fund balance exceed 75 days of operational expenditures? We have a higher threshold for the number of days for fund balance. It's 90 plus due to the 3 months. And so we are exceeding what VERS says. 75 days would be 110 million. And the ending fund balance for fiscal year 21 was 170 million. So we're well within that threshold. Indicator number 7 is the number of days for cash on hand. You have to have over 90 days to get the full 10 points. Lewisville ISD cash on hand for that school year was 143 days. Indicator number 8 was the measure of current assets to current liabilities ratio for the school district sufficient to cover short-term debt. This is on the government-wide schedule, and when fund balance drops and you have your liabilities that are increasing or are there, a reminder, this is a corporate indicator. Our property values pretty much determine how we cover our debt. It looks like that we will, for this next year, we'll stay at the 8, possibly could drop to 6 points. We're just running those numbers since we just got our audit. Indicator number 9, did the school district's general fund revenues equal or exceed expenditures? And if not, was the school district's number of days of cash on hand greater than or equal to 60 days? As I said previously, our cash on hand was at 143 days. Indicator number 10 is not being scored this year and has not been scored, probably will not be scored next year, was not scored last year. That is the indicator that you're budgeted to actual revenues. Due to COVID and the ESSER supplants, that has been impossible for Texas school districts to score in these past couple of years. Indicator number 11 was the ratio of long-term liabilities to total assets for the school district sufficient to support long-term solvency. We will remain at 8 for the 21-22 school year, but it will be something to watch over time and taking on more debt. This is it punishes districts that pass bonds in this indicator, and so we watch that one pretty closely. Indicator number 12 was the debt per 100 of assessed property value ratio sufficient to support future debt payments. Our tax base is very strong, and we earn all 10 points in that indicator. Indicator 13 was the school district's administrative cost ratio equal to or less than the threshold ratio. We are less than the threshold ratio to earn all 10 points. Indicator number 14, did the school district not have a 15% decline in the students to staff ratio over 3 years? We had a 5% decline that matches our gradual decline in enrollment over those 3 years. Indicator 15 is not being scored. It's the enrollment variance for your actual, what your actual ADA was for what you submitted to the legislature. Again, COVID has, and the fluctuating enrollment has played a role in the state choosing not to rate that indicator for that year, and it will not rate it for the next year either. Indicator 16 did the comparison of of the PEMS data to like information in the school district's AFR result in a total variance of less than 3% of all expenditures by function. We calculated today it is less than 10% of 1% or 1/100th of a percent. So that ceiling indicator is passed. 17 is did the external and independent auditor report that the AFR was free of any instances of material weaknesses and internal controls. There were none, and there will also be, it will be reported later on this evening that there will be none for fiscal year 22. Indicator 18, did the external independent auditor indicate the AFR was free of any instances of material noncompliance for grants, contracts, and laws related to local, state, or federal funds? And the answer, it was free, the audit was free of that. So we earned all 10 points, and we'll do that again in the next year. Indicator 19, did the school district post the required financial information? These are our reporting indicators that we report on our financial transparency page. We earned all 5 possible points for that and will in the future. Indicator 20, did the school board members discuss the district's property values at a board meeting within 120 days before the district adopted its budget? We were well within our timelines there, as we hold multiple budget workshops prior to passing the budget in August. So that ceiling is passed. There are 5 disclosures for the school's first rating, the superintendent's current employment contract, which will be posted in our financial transparency page. The reimbursements received by the superintendent and school board members for the 12-month period ending August 31st, 2021. We report on that. For disclosure number 3, 4, and 5, we had none of those things reported by any board members. The other information for the 12-month period ended August 31st, 2021 is that we did receive a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. That was the award that was reported on earlier by Communications, the Government Finance Officers Association, and the Association of School Business Officials International. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Miller.
Just give me 1 second to reset here. I think I'm going to, the public hearing, the financial, I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to give the time, 7:38 p.m. I will open the public hearing. I'm sorry. If there are any persons present who would like to speak to this topic, please come forward at this time. Please line up behind the podium in an orderly fashion, and we'll be glad to take your comments. Okay. If there are no speakers, I declare this public hearing closed at 7:38 p.m. I'm sorry, consent items. Are there any items to be pulled, or would someone like to make a motion? Selves will make the motion. No items will be pulled.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda items as recommended by administration.
Do I have a second? Dr. Bonner. All right, any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Passing all that paper makes it sound like we're moving fast, but here we go. Okay, demographer report. Mr. Kosh, and we see Mr. Gartner in the audience, so.
Thank you, President Miller, Dr. Rapp. I'm going to welcome Rocky Gardner from Templeton Demographics coming forward to give the third quarter report for LISD.
Up straight, or do I need to slouch like I was told not to? Okay, good. It's a pleasure to be back in Lewisville. I feel like it's been a long time, so it's great to be back. This is our third quarter report, and keep in mind, so the third quarter, this is data that was researched through the end of September. So keep that in mind, because things are shifting pretty quickly right now. So I'm going to run. Is someone, I guess, advancing for me? So I want to talk just a little bit just about economy, and I'm not an economist, but we research the economy. We try to understand as best we can. Unemployment rates are still down below, almost below where they were pre-COVID. So we're seeing unemployment rates basically below 5%, which is considered full employment. When they drop below 5%, that's when there's the biggest challenges to try to find them, to find staff. And we're all experiencing that. I think everywhere where you go, there's staff challenges. This is the part that kind of doesn't make sense when we talk recession, how low unemployment rates are. The job market feels strong. Then we go to the housing market, and it's a totally different thing. That's where they say, okay, well, we're already in a recession. So we're going to see how that plays out. But what's interesting to watch right now, and this price point is important in Lewisville. Most of your housing on the east side there is a little bit higher than this. But I think this is a neat graph. Back in the spring, this $350,000 house was running about $1,900 payment. Fast forward 6 months, that payment changed to $2,765. That's a big number, and that prices people out. And that's when we begin to see cancellations from new housing. So typically what happens is when you're building a home, you can't really lock in a rate until you can set a closing date. But unfortunately, it's taking so long to build these homes that time span is what's been the challenge. So people, by the time they get the home to where they can close on it, it's like gone up $700 or $800, and that's become a challenge. So that's one thing we're keeping an eye on, and it is beginning to slow things down. Dallas-Fort Worth was building well over 50,000 homes a year annually. That was the pace, and that was a very strong pace. It may have been, at this point, we might look back and say it was a little bit unhealthy. And then when with the interest rates going up, and things began to slow down. You can see this. You can see how closings and starts. So keep in mind, a closing's an occupied home, and a start is one that's under construction. That line's very tight, and then you see it begin to divide, and that's because they can't get the home built, they can't get the home closed. So then builders now begin to pause. Interest rates have begun to go up. Now builders have slowed. The starts have decreased, and those numbers are going to come together. They could fall within two years. I think the annualized number could drop below 40,000 before it's done. I do think we have housing inventory out there. We're still going to see some housing change, but it's just going to take some time for it to come back. And really, from our perspective, and we'll talk more about the projections in a little bit, we may have to make an adjustment to the projections after when we see what happens in the fourth quarter and the first quarter. Those are going to be real important quarters to watch. Occupancy rates have actually declined a little bit in multifamily, but this isn't because there aren't people for apartments. It's because they're building so many apartments. So when they bring all those more apartments online, occupancy goes down. But really, the apartments are doing very well because people are not getting in housing. And part of what's going to begin to impact this as well is for rent housing that's being built too, because now we're seeing developers come up and buy housing. And that could be a good thing for the district. I guess from a student yield perspective, you might see a higher student yield in some of these because it's going to get families into homes that couldn't afford it because of either a down payment or the payment itself. So it's going to be interesting to watch. So we're sitting on just over 1,119 annual starts. You see that annual closing number is now below 1,000, just below 1,000. That's a trailing 12 months from the third quarter. Inventory, we'll talk a little bit more about that, is sitting at 951. Vacant developed lots, 984. Not a real large number, that vacant developed lots. That's just 1 year's supply in theory. But that's probably a sign of some of the slowdown that's going to happen in Lewisville anyway. So there's a combination of things in Lewisville too. Keep in mind that there's only 1,600 futures out there. So there's things we're going to slow down in Lewisville eventually. This quarter, though, 247 starts. So start rate dropped down to 247. We'll still start over 1,000 homes in 2022. Closings, again, just 787 in 2022. I don't know that they'll reach 1,000, but we'll probably close more homes in 2022 than we did in 2021. So that is a good thing. But inventory, this is the chart we show every time, and what I like to say on this chart is where you see color is where you have the most activity. Yellow color representing the highest amount of activity, followed by green and followed by red. So you can see the campuses. Memorial, of course, is growing the quickest, is seeing the most strain there. That inventory number, that 951, those are homes that are under construction or finished vacant. So that 904 under construction means there's about 47 homes that are finished but vacant. So that's the beginning of kind of what could be a buildup. We're not sure yet. That's why the fourth quarter we'll see if that we're watching to see if finished vacant inventory increases, because that'll be a sign of cancellations or slowdown. Right now, that's not a very big number, so that's not a big concern. That inventory sitting at 950 tells me that those are homes that right now are under construction, and by right now, I meant at the end of September. Certainly by when school starts next August, all of those homes will be complete, and most of them will have buyers. So I do think we're going to see over 1,000 homes close, and that's where we're building our forecast off of that 1,000 number, right around 1,000 homes. Where are the homes being built? This chart's looked the same for quite some time. The big thing I want to show you on this chart is that we do have groundwork underway on about 503 lots. So where you see some red outlines up there is where the builders are they're delivering a few lots to kind of get that number back over 1,000. So that's kind of a good sign that there are some builders in some areas that are still willing to get the lots out there. Then they can see if they can find buyers for those lots to build them. And a multifamily, 2,800 multifamily units are under construction right now across the district. Roughly 360 of those are senior units, so they're not going to have children, we don't think, right? And then you got over 8,600 future multifamily. We'll see how quickly these come online with timing and construction right now. I just put two charts in here, so don't worry, I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of pictures. Oak Bridge Crossing, 127 future lots. That's a Toll Brothers product. Once they decide to get going there, that'll go pretty quick. I think Toll Brothers will take off. And I want to show you this. This is in the Flower Mound attendance zone, Vickery and Williams Ranch. Vickery there, 73 homes under construction right now. This is one that just took off. And that yield there, now, of course, at the end of September, there were only 17 homes occupied, but we were getting one student per home there of those first 17 homes. So it's that. And I know Flower Mound's been seeing some growth there at that campus that we didn't see it growing quite that quick. Now, as this development builds out, that yield's going to decline. We're going to get down into that 0.6 number likely, which would be about 0.3 of that would be elementary. But it's starting out with some really high yields there. And you can see the picture on the right was just in December. So that's a satellite image from December, and you can see they're really, really going quick there. Okay, and then now I'm going to get into projections, and this is where I'm projecting my projections. Kindergarten is so hard. Kindergarten is the biggest challenge right now. Our kindergarten, births declined by 10,000 in 2020. So there's 10,000 less births in Texas in 2020 than 2019. Big number. Birth rates are decreasing. COVID hits. Students don't come back. Where those students go, those are all the questions. Are they going to come back? Because and just to be clear too, they did not go to charters. So we don't know. We can't blame a charter for it. We can't blame that. We know that their students are out there. It's got to be homeschooling, right? And that's kind of the thought. Private, kindergarten, of course, is not a mandatory grade. So private kindergarten, and we are seeing some first grades pick up. What we did see this year is you see an increase there. So what we look at, just a reminder, district births is zip codes. So we can collect the data at the zip code level. That's the smallest level that we can collect it. So we build as close as we can Lewisville's boundaries with zip codes, and then we look at your kindergarten enrollment 5 years later to create that ratio that you're seeing there. Back in 2019, back when things were normal, it felt normal back then, right? That number was at 0.96, so we were well over 90% ratio. We fell down to 82% in 2020. That was COVID. A little bit more last year, 87%, 89% this year. So that trend, we seem to be starting to see them come back. We're forecasting your kindergarten based on about a 93% ratio. So we're being pretty optimistic with this forecast that we're going to get some of these kindergarten students back. Because if kindergarten doesn't come back, that begins to, that effects don't go away for quite some time, unfortunately. So this year's enrollment, we were down almost 400 students at snapshot. My forecast was about 200 students higher than this. I guess we were off by about 0.5%, so you came in about 0.5% under what we forecasted. There's some pretty low cohorts up there. The kindergarten cohort at 0.987, that was probably our biggest miss, and that is what's going to kind of roll forward now with those. That kindergarten class of 3,100, that was 3,500 students 4 years ago. and that's a significant number when we roll forward. Brings us to the forecast. I'm forecasting a drop next year of approximately 400 students, keeping in mind how big your 12th grade class is and how small your kindergarten class. There's like 1,000 students different. So you lose 1,000 students just by that that group graduating. So we're growing your district. You don't see the number up there, but we're growing your district over 500 students. So we can't make up all of that 1,000, but we are growing the district. If you look at how many 6th graders, they're forecast to be 7th graders, that's where you get the growth cohort. So just wanted to keep that in mind, because I know we've talked about it before. This isn't new to you guys, but just sometimes you can see that and just be shocked that, you know, we've got 5 years of negative enrollment coming, but we are growing it. You know, we're still counting on you. There is some housing out there, so we can still see some growth if these kindergarten classes can stay up over that 3,000 number. Really, I'd like to see them get to 3,200 in order to stay on trend with this forecast. We got campus projections here as well. Bluebonnet, you know, and I think it's Bluebonnet and Memorial is where, well, Memorial should have some color on it there. It's not, but it should have some color on it. Your middle schools are looking pretty good, and then we got your high schools, and of course Flower Mound 9th grade is probably the tightest right now. We declined by 400 students. Interest rates have tempered demand. 950 homes are in inventory. Those are going to get finished this year, so hopefully those have students in it. There is a little bit of a challenge in the yields out there. We're declining pre-COVID, and a lot of it, that was the product. It was kind of a cottage product, or it was kind of a townhome product, so we're going to see what happens with that. But there's groundwork underway on 500 lots. That 47,000 seems to be the sweet spot right now, you know, unless we just see a big jump in kindergarten enrollment. Oh, that was a lot. Pretty fast.
Okay, time for questions. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Hessen? Do you? No? Well, Rocky, that might be a first.
Yeah.
So
not even you. Okay.
Wait till next quarter.
All right.
So
Yeah,
thank
too.
you very much for that, and thank you, Mr. Kosh, as well. And we'll continue on. Results driven. Bye, Rocky.
Have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too. Merry Christmas. Results driven accountability. Dr. Fitzhugh.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about another accountability measure that TEA has in place for us called results-driven accountability. It replaced the PBMAS system. 3 years ago I was asked that question by Ms. Prosnick if this was new, and they changed the acronym. So now RDA stands for results-driven accountability. These are all of the different accountability systems that we brainstormed, and I'm sure I quite possibly missed one in the process. But we have our state accountability that's A to F and uses STAR data. We have our federal accountability that's at the campus level, and that's STAR data. We have results-driven accountability that's at the district level. It uses STAR, and for lack of a better term, I just called it PEAMS. PEAMS is any other data that we submit that TEA uses. We have the SPP indicators. There's 17 of those. Those kind of roll up into the RDA report at times. We have the first rating system. We have the TAPR that is STAR and PEAMS. And then PEAMS in and of itself, we started, just a heads up, we started about, I guess in the last several years, we were giving 5 submissions of PEAMS data, and the state has us up to 14 per year, and they continue to increase. So just so you know, we are submitting more and more data to TEA, and they're utilizing it in different reports as we move forward. So RDA is a local report for districts. It's created by TEA to help us look at some different areas. It looks at 3 specific groups: the bilingual education, other special populations, which includes foster care, homeless, military, and then special education. So the report, I pulled some snippets out of the report. There's many more pages to it, but the way it looks is that it gives each area an indicator and gives some cut point targets, and then it shows how the district performed. And then if it's a report only, it'll be in that performance level column, or it gives a performance level of 0 to 4. So this is a screenshot of our bilingual ESL page. And just the takeaways from this one is that several of these metrics are report only, as TEA is trying to set the targets. It's another use of STAR, but it's used a little bit different. For this one, the approaches is appropriate, is the target that they set for students. And then LISD exceeded the performance targets or the state rate in the majority of the measures. 18 of them were report only. We have 9 performance levels of 0, which means we were within the target, and then we have 3 that were 1. We slightly missed those areas. Also for bilingual ESL, they look at the graduation rate and the dropout rate. And so this is just a highlight for the fact that our bilingual group, student group, exceeds the state threshold and has increased from 81.5% to 90.6% for our graduation rate. That's something we've really targeted and paid attention to, and you see the efforts. Also, the dropout rate has decreased from 2.6 to 1.6, and so you can see, again, the efforts there. When you look at other student populations, again, it's very similar format. We're meeting the majority of the targets. 2 of them are report only. 9 of them we were within the target cut point range, and then we have 1 that we were slightly out of the range. For special education, there are a lot more areas that are evaluated. Report only, we had 10. We had 15 that we met, we were within the target range. 4 performance levels 1, and then 3 performance level 2 where we missed the targets by a little bit more. When you look at the graduation rate and the dropout rate for these groups, you can see that our graduation rate has increased from 83.8 to 86.4. While we're still within the threshold for dropouts, our dropout rate did increase by 1/10 of a percentage point. So what TEA does is they basically average out our performance level pieces and then assign a rating of meets requirements, needs assistance, needs intervention, or needs substantial intervention. And then we engage in improvement activities based on what we're rated. So for this school year, for our bilingual area, we are meets requirement. For our other student populations, we need assistance because we had that 1 target area with the 1. And then for special education, we meets requirement as well. And so based on that needs assistance, we're going to engage in continuous improvement through our district improvement plan and continue to target those areas. RDA includes other data elements that don't go out on the performance levels, and data used in these calculations is just really lagging. That's the piece you have to kind of watch as you're looking at this report. So additional considerations, half of these indicators are based on STAR that we use in A to F as well. STAR indicators require that students pass the assessment, where Domain 3 requires that students meet performance level, and now this is back to approaches. So we have a lot of inconsistent systems playing in terms of holding us accountable. TEA would like to incorporate RDA into part of the A to F accountability. It would go into the closing the gaps domain in some way, shape, or form. They're starting to kind of release some timelines for that. It looks like it'll be an extended process, but we'll just have more indicators within that closing the gaps domain. And with that, are there any questions?
Any questions, board? Dr. Fitzhugh, thank you very much for that, and I think it kind of puts a bow on our last month's discussion where we talked a little bit about accountability as well, and so thank you for that.
I think real quick, if I could add on to that, Mr. Miller, I just really want to reiterate that because there are multiple accountability systems operating in the state of Texas, and we know that the one that gets the most talk, if you will, is A to F. But as Dr. Fitzhugh just reported on, there are many indicators in this accountability system where the district is thriving and doing very well on those state-mandated assessments. So I would just always encourage people that when they want to talk about accountability, and I see our principals out there tonight that have TIP plans coming before you for approval, there are so many different aspects to accountability that you could be awash in plans based on which accountability system are you talking about and what measure are you having to respond to. And so I really wanted Dr. Fitzhugh to start bringing these other accountability systems to the forefront in order to highlight where that there are other state measures that we're being successful on that the A to F system doesn't include.
Thank you, Dr. Rapp. Ms. Hassett.
I do have just one, not question, comment. Could you, Dr. Rapp, explain just a little bit about how much staff time it really takes to have 5 different accountability systems that use the 1 STAR measure or pieces of it? how much staff time it takes to reanalyze STAR in yet another different way, whereas if we could choose to do something else and highlight other areas, how much staff time does it take to continue to reanalyze state data?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would say it takes an immense amount of staff time to stay up to date with the hundreds of pages that you have to comb through to understand A to F accountability, RDA accountability, and then you add on top of that what she had in that chart. For instance, special ed has to understand the state performance plan indicators. And so it takes a lot of time to study all those manuals and keep all the different accountability systems working and figuring out what's our data going to look like. You often don't understand the targets in order to be able to predict your data, which is, we wouldn't do that anywhere else to any other people. And so why it's acceptable to do that to K through 12 education, I still don't understand. It's quite befuddling to me, and I look forward to us talking to our elected officials about it on Wednesday, actually.
That's a great idea. And I think that we know there are principals in the room that have an interest in this, and I would encourage our community to contact their schools if they have concerns about performance or instruction, anything like that, that they don't have to wait for a board meeting or send an email to the board, but please feel free to reach out to the campuses to get more information. That said, monthly technology report, Mr. Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The monthly technology report is in board book. The data for this month's report is for September. A couple things to point out on page 1. Our total amount of spend in our bond area has gone up a little bit since the last month's report. However, our remaining balance is about the same. The reason for that is we've been closing out projects where we've had some unencumbered dollars. If you look at our inventory, our device inventory, the big item that's of concern is our teacher devices. As of September, they're over 4.5 years old in age. So that's an area where we're seeing more ongoing support, disruption for batteries, motherboards, logic boards. So it's becoming somewhat problematic to maintain. On the IFE area, you'll notice the balance is similar to what it was the month prior, but you'll notice the revenue and expenses being less, and the reason for that is with September, that's our first month in our new fiscal year. So what this is showing is your revenue and expenses just for the month of September. On page 2, you'll notice our opt-in percentage has crept up a little bit since last month. The number of students in grades 4 through 12 that have a device is over 96%. And I want to also point out that we have 2 different ways that students can opt into the program. They can either take the device with no insurance or devices with insurance. But ultimately, that's a very high opt-in number, so we're trending very good there. Also, we're almost getting to 90% daily average of devices on campus. So when students opt into that program, are they bringing them on campus daily? We're cruising around almost 90%. Also, our average use is up quite a bit since the month prior. We're up, I think, right around 60 meg per user per day. So the usage of the devices has increased in the month of September as well. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
I'm just going to take control here since Mr. Miller stepped out for a moment, but I just thought of a question myself. How are we doing with the Google pare down? How's that going with students and staff and such?
Yeah, that's actually it's been a tough project for everybody. A lot of change with it. However, it's been very successful. We're pleased with the action that students and staff have taken. We've actually gotten slightly below at this point the amount that we need to get to by the first of the year. However, with the quotas that are in place, we very likely are still going to need to buy storage as people come closer to their quota, because we had a lot of people that weren't close to it and some people that had to clean up. So that part has gone very, very well. I think we're down in the maybe mid 150 terabyte range, and our target was 221. So I'm expecting that to balance off and then continue to grow. So at some point, I don't think it's going to be this week, but we'll very likely in the spring have to purchase additional storage. But we've really reduced a lot of it.
Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions, Mr. Colbert? No? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then we'll move into the student services audit with Mr. Kosh.
President Miller, Dr. Rapp, this is a follow-up to the student services audit performed by Gibson, and it's kind of a discipline update. So, just to set the stage, all LISD schools are governed under the Texas Education Code, all the way down to individual campus management plans. And you can see that right under the Texas Education Code is the board policy. And the LISD Student Code of Conduct, which is in board policy, governs what we do in LISD at our campuses. Going to focus a little bit here on campus behavioral management plans at that campus level. Some of the key components of a campus management plan. What are the campus behavior expectations? And those can be different within the same concept at each campus, elementary, middle school, and high school. How will the staff and students learn and practice these expectations? What behavior should teachers respond to? What behavior should administrators respond to? And then what interventions and disciplinary strategies will be used? And so it's important that those key components are talked about and discussed at a campus level with all the stakeholders.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit here as we talk about some data that's coming up by just reminding everyone about where our focus is. And so when we come to looking at behavior management, we look at this through the lens of an opportunity for teaching and learning. Behavior is an opportunity for teaching and learning, whether that's good or bad or somewhere in the middle. And when we're looking at behavior management, we know that we're going to need both non-disciplinary intervention and support and skill building opportunity and also discipline as we respond to these. Above all else, safety and disruption-free learning environments are a priority. So when campus administrators are making those decisions on how they'll address the behavior that they encounter in classrooms or in the school, that is their top priority. And sometimes that behavior is going to require removal in order to keep those classroom environments safe and to keep learning happening. But no matter what the decision is that the campus administrator makes when addressing that, we do believe that every behavior has that opportunity for them to teach and learn. It's not just an administrative function. And we know that a lot of misbehavior comes from skill gaps. It comes from a lack of understanding. It can come from trauma. It can be related to disabilities. There's many reasons that that behavior happens, and we expect our administrators to respond to that with more than just the disciplinary action.
So before I move into talking about some data points, I just want to say that for every discipline number, every data point, there's a narrative, there's a story behind it. From the families, from the students, from the teachers, to the campus administration. So as we dive into behaviors and interventions and discipline actions in LISD, I just wanted to make sure I said that. Just in a quick review, the student services audit was performed by Gibson, and they looked at in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, DAEP, and JJAEP placements. That really encompassed only about 20% of what is done in LISD. So I'm going to draw your attention to the other 43,000 disciplinary actions where we're talking about other non-out-of-placement detentions, restorative practices, and base. So when we talk about the non-out-of-placement, so when there's an offense happens in a school setting, there's an action. And actions can take the place of either out of placement or, discipline actions are out of placement or within that placement. So when we talk about non-out-of-placement actions, we have base that we can utilize in our campuses, detentions, restorative practices, and then, of course, some other out-of-placement actions with necessarily an administrative function. It could involve the counseling staff as well.
So just diving in a little bit to what BASE is, just in case you're not familiar with that. BASE is an intervention behavioral setting. It's available to special education students, and it's designed to provide both behavioral and academic support to meet the kids where they are. This can often be utilized with special education students instead of ISS or OSS. And so the setting becomes far less punitive and much more constructive and supportive for the student. It allows them to receive not just the type of intervention that they need to make adjustments for behavioral success, but also ensure that their academic needs are being met while they're not in their regular classroom at that time. We started using BASE, I believe, in 2017. And so we have some data for you on how we use BASE as an intervention. So in that middle column is the racial and ethnic student group breakdown of our special education students. So this is just special education students, since those are the only ones who can access this intervention. And then over in the right column, you can see how BASE was used when broken down by those same student group populations. And then the chart is just a replication of that same data. So then looking at restorative, we have restorative practices. As you know, we've been working with our campuses since 2017-18 to try to bring some different strategies to be used, not just as a disciplinary response, but also proactively by creating a different cultural look in the classroom where they're valuing the relationship building and those skills to help the students be successful. So with restorative practices, when we're looking at responding to behavior, you can use those interventions alone, or they can be paired with an actual a traditional disciplinary action. The focus is always to build relationships, restore relationships when they've been damaged, and then close the gaps that the student might have when it comes to behavioral skills or social skills. So just some examples, repeating what Mr. Kosh mentioned earlier, or showed you on the slide earlier. We can have discussion, circles, mediation, counseling. At the elementary level, we do a lot of social skills instruction to address those key learning pieces that the littles are doing as they grow. And then reflection activities, sometimes it's restitution. You'd be amazed how much difference just learning how to actually formulate and deliver an apology can do with kids who may not have had that opportunity. And then even community service. So you can see graphed the campus administrators' use of restorative behavior interventions from the time we first trained them in 2017-18 through last school year. It's been steadily increasing as they continue to try to utilize those with our students. And then here's a snapshot of the use of those interventions just in the last school year. And again, the middle column is going to show your enrollment for these student groups, and that is all LISD students in that middle column. And then over on the right, you can see the use of restorative behavior interventions that were documented with those students, and the graph is just a different breakout of that data.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the cohort data that we have, and just as kind of go back in time, in 2017-18, we brought in the restorative trainer, and we trained all administrators on all campuses at that time. And then as that leads into our cohort 1 in 2018 and 19, cohort 2 was in 19-20, cohort 3 is in 21 and 22, and cohort 4 was in 22-23. Just keep in mind, there was that thing that we went through in 20 and 21 with COVID. All students were virtual for the fourth 9 weeks. And then in 21, an average of 33% of our students were virtual during the year. And so as we go back and look at data trends, we have to take that into account, that there's a little bit of a disruption with the continuity of our data that we're able to pull and compare.
And one of the things I would just add to that training is we actually brought our NEDRP trainers in 2017-18 to do that initial training, but we have continued to provide annual training, and sometimes even more often than annual, to our administrators through Thrive and other opportunities. So that has been something we have sustained each year. So a little bit of data about these restorative cohorts. We took a snapshot of cohort 1 and 2 since those were our groups of campuses that had had the most opportunity to be working with what they learned in that training. And so you can see that 2016-17 is what we're calling our pre-initiative year. That's the year before we trained our administrators. And this was for all those campuses combined, just those cohort 1 and 2 campuses, that is the number of ISS actions that we had in that year. And then moving down, you can see that in 4 out of 5 years, we continued to see a decline in ISS, or we seen the ISS was less than that baseline year. Including when you look at the COVID years, statistically, those are still a decrease, even though we're trying to account for the fact that, we had fewer kids at school in 21, and we had 1 quarter where all kids were home. In 20, we still looked at what that would look like on a quarter-by-quarter basis, and those were still statistical reductions, which is encouraging. And then looking at that same data, same cohort 1 and 2 campuses with out-of-school suspension, you can see that there's been a steady decline on those campuses in the use of OSS as an action from that baseline year. And again, statistically, those were reductions in those COVID years. And then the last snapshot that we took is with discretionary DAP. With those 2 cohorts, and again, all years showed a decrease from our baseline year in discretionary DAP, including statistically the COVID years. I know we've talked with you guys before about this, but part of this is the continued focus in student services on close scrutiny of those discretionary DAP placements. Mr. Kosh and I continue to look at those and review those to be sure that we are aware and agree with those placements that we have choice in making.
Once again, looking at what Gibson reviewed and then what Gibson did not review, they did not look at non-out-of-placement actions. For every offense that happens, there's an action, and it's either out of placement or non-out-of-placement. And here are some examples of some of our non-out-of-placement actions. And once again, like I said, it's not necessarily just an administrative function at a certain time. There's counseling referrals, non-interaction agreements, stay-away agreements, parent and student conferences, the utilization of Hope and Adapt through our counseling services, warnings, behavioral contracts, and then that's the support and intervention side, but then there are some discipline consequences that fall non-out of placement before or after school, lunch detentions, loss of privileges, technology restrictions, bus suspension. And so there's a lot of things that can be utilized without taking a student out of their academic setting.
So looking at all those combined non-out-of-placement actions, so we separated out BASE and we separated out the restorative practices, which we showed you on the previous slides. This is everything else that falls in that non-out-of-placement description. And so again, that middle column is our enrollment, and then the column on the right shows that breakdown with those same student groups in terms of use with those actions, with your graph on the left.
So emphasis on keeping students in the classrooms, just some pure numbers here. 65% of the actions to students received no out-of-placement actions at all. 17.5 received an out-of-placement action first before taking them out of their educational setting. 8.1 received a mix, and then 9.2 received an out-of-placement action only. But I'm going to bring up the fact that out of that group, we're talking mostly about mandatory placements to DAP or JJAP at that time.
And just kind of as a clarification on this data, because this is actually very interesting, Kathy Bray, who was our invaluable partner in this, I can't speak highly enough of her work with this data, she actually went and looked at every single student in that school year and analyzed if they had had out-of-placement actions, not out-of-placement actions, the order in which they happened, so that we could pull that data down to kind of look at the pattern with that. So that's where those actions, that data on those actions is coming from. And then some graduation data. So this is just a little bit complicated in how we presented this because we're kind of in the middle of waiting on some things with graduation. So on the left, this is our data as we have submitted it, and we believe it will be posted by TEA. But because it's not final yet, this is just kind of the data that we pulled. So we did not post this as the official graduation rates. But this is what we're expecting to see out of our students who graduated in 21-22. And then on the right, we ran the actual official graduation rates from TEA just to have kind of a point of comparison. So these are students who had some sort of out-of-placement disciplinary action sometime in the 4 years leading up to graduation. So that is the student group from which this data is pulled. I did not know what this data was going to show when we pulled it. We've never actually analyzed this. And interestingly enough, all the things in yellow on the left side showed that the students with out-of-placement discipline actually graduated with a higher percentage of that student group than the average from last year. So just kind of interesting data about that. So just a few takeaways from what we looked at and what we've shared with you. When LISD administrators are using interventions and consequences, they have a whole range of things to choose from to handle it. We do give a lot of guidance to try to keep consistency across the district, but we also want our administrators to really look at the needs of the student in each individual situation as well. And what we found is that our administrators use non-out-of-placement intervention and discipline at a ratio of 4-to-1 with out-of-placement discipline. We found that restorative practices are being used proactively as behavior intervention, especially with student populations that are identified as high priority. And with our cohort 1 and 2 campuses trained in restorative practices, there has been a decrease in out-of-placement data before and during COVID. And then just kind of a final thought that there's a lot of emphasis on the out-of-placement discipline, which is all that the state evaluates, but there's a lot that's happening with behavior management on campuses that doesn't fall into that category and is not disproportionate because campuses are working pretty hard with those kids with a lot of different interventions and strategies.
So another big takeaway from our review of this data is that the idea from Rebecca Clark is that we need to create a district discipline leadership team. And this is in an effort to give some consistency to what we do in student services with our discipline and consequences, out of placement, non out of placement. We asked our administrators across the district to help us out yearly. We need a group of administrators for code of conduct review. We needed a group of administrators to take a look at dress code. We need a group of administrators for different infractions that we have. And so our thought is that that's a revolving group. We want to be more consistent with this group of individuals that are leading the campuses and leading our district. And so we're going to have a 2-year commitment to this from the campus administrators to join this group.
So just kind of an overview of what we're going to do. We're actually excited. We have our team put together. We're meeting shortly after the return from the winter break to get started. We have campus administrators that represent all feeder patterns on all levels who volunteer to serve on this committee. We've got a wide variety of experiences from I'm just getting started to I've been here a long time. So we're excited about that too. We also are going to have some members from Manya's team with counseling to join us. We have one of the special ed directors that will be on our team. 3 of our 4 general ed behavior intervention specialists will also participate. And then Mr. Kosh, myself, Ms. Banyol, and Matthew Morris will all be on that team as well. We're going to be looking broadly at the oversight of just district discipline policy and practices, the code of conduct, our matrix, the guidelines and regulations, and the guidance that we give to campuses. We're going to spend some significant time with data analysis. We've pulled so much data down in the last few months that we really want to put some stuff in front of them that we can give them to work on to help us set some goals and some action step recommendations for discipline priorities and for meeting state and federal requirements as well. We're going to ask that they make recommendations to district leadership we're going to be outside the box. Are there programs? Are there ideas that they would like to see or that they can think of? How are we allocating resources, and what resources do we need? And overall, we're going to look at as well creating a comprehensive district behavior management plan. We're asking the campuses to have their own, but we'd like to give them a foundation from which all of the district operates. So that'll be a big piece that they work on and then bring forward with recommendations. Questions?
Well,
Mr. Costa, do you have anything else?
We're missing a slide. I was going to cover the next steps, but I'll just go ahead and talk through them. We're going to continue training, discussions with campuses surrounding that restorative practices. We're going to provide ongoing support and oversight for these campus behavior management plans on campuses. Utilize the district leadership team to continue looking at the discipline and interventions, and to continue training utilizing EduGents, the discipline dashboard data with campuses and administrators in conjunction with the school chiefs. Before we open it up to questions, I do want to give a couple of great thank yous for the tremendous work. Dr. Fitzhugh for the guidance, pulling the data, Rebecca Clark for her passion and her dedication to this department, and then the big thank you, and Ms. Clark has already said, Kathy Bray for her brain and her ability to pull the data and give us workable numbers to then present. So with that, open it up for questions.
I had a question. I don't know exactly, how to phrase it, but when I look at a couple of your slides as it relates to non-out-of-placement actions and restorative practices, when I look at the races represented, they all seem about even for the percentage. I'm assuming the first column is percentage of students in the district. And then the action by ethnicity, except for the African American student group. What does that mean exactly? And is that something that there should be a focus on?
There absolutely should be, and there is. It's one of the things that we talk about because that is our area of targeted disproportionality in the district, both currently and historically. Specifically, the state has looked at out-of-placement disproportionality, so one of the things that's always a focus is DAP. However, one of the things that I think is actually positive about that data, when you look, for example, at the restorative practices data, there is disproportionality, but what that says to me is that the administrators are responding to offenses that happen in a way that's not disproportionate in terms of putting kids out of placement. So they're seeking other options that avoid that out-of-placement action. So some of that, I think, is positive when we're talking about the non-out-of-placement responses to the offenses.
And one thing I would add, we ran the non-out-of-placement data against the criteria that the state uses to determine significant disproportionality, and found that if we were submitting this data to the state, it would not be considered significantly disproportionate. Now, that still does not mean that we're not working on the areas that we've identified, and I think that that's one reason why we knew it was so important to analyze this data, and really this is the first time that this data has come forward in this manner, and a lot of that conversation happened as a result of the Gibson audit that started with the out-of-placement actions. One of the things I would go back to in the earlier graph from the Gibson audit, where you see the percentages related to what Gibson studied and the percentages related to what we studied, I think in the big picture, when we look at the out-of-placements and the state measurement of that data, DAEP represents 1%, right, of overall discipline actions. And that obviously we still continue to work on ensuring that as few of students end up in out-of-placement as possible. But one of the things Gibson showed us, that audit, was that we as a district actually, when compared to like peers, are keeping students on campus and in classrooms more than other districts are. So we, I think, are tracking now with this data our interventions with students and ensuring that our interventions are being utilized with students appropriately, and that we're using that data to see our interventions making a difference. And from here, we would want to see that non-out-of-placement percentage continue to go down.
And I just want to make one other comment. Just it struck me immediately, so I just want to thank the district for bringing the information forward and having a plan to work on that. I will say that it's not all bad, because I was excited to see the graduation numbers. They looked really, really good.
Thank you, Sheila. Appreciate it. Did you have something?
I have a question, but first a comment. I really do appreciate staff evaluating all of this information, because this was very important to us, because we do want to address that disproportionality. And I greatly appreciate you addressing this. I mean, community members have brought up this issue, and we're desperately working on trying to make sure that it's better in the district. But I do feel the data, I was a little afraid, just because you never know what data is going to tell you. And a lot of the data, I think, speaks really well as to how well our teachers are doing in the classroom, because I do sometimes hear from teachers that they don't feel like that they can discipline as much as they used to. But the data tells me that they are. Not only are they disciplining, but they are using those restorative practices to build those relationships with the students, so that it doesn't trickle down to the out-of-placement as often. So it's showing so many different things within the data that give me hope long term as we're trending down on the numbers that I'd like to trend down on. So that was a long-winded speech. I apologize. Your wonderful new discipline leadership team. Love this idea. Can you give a report back to the board is my question.
Of course. We'll give updates as often as you or Dr. Rapp tell us that you need it. Just so you know, our plan is actually to meet at least 4 times this year before the school year ends. We're going to have a half-day meeting shortly after we come back from break, and then we'll have some summer work as well. So we'll absolutely keep you updated. And just, I don't think I said this before, but the disproportionality concerns is one of the things that the team will be looking at as part of their data analysis and brainstorming. And
I would love to see findings and next steps associated with the leadership team. So thank you.
Ms. Clark, you mentioned there's about 30 to 31 members that asked to be on it, and so we're going to utilize them and really focus in on those items that need attention.
Jenny.
So first of all, I want to thank you for doing the cohorts. That was a specific request of mine, because I think it's important. And I think we get a nice reset to see the next 4 years with this year after the events of COVID. My question is more about, instead of the discipline, is the group, and I'd asked this in board book, are you going to be looking at specific campuses for their disproportionality?
certainly that's a piece of the data that we look at. That's a much more complicated data pool, is that you have to look at enrollment as well as the actions and all of that pieces. But Mr. Kosh and I have talked about that and how we can possibly pull that data as a piece. We want this group to be very intentional and very thoughtful and productive. We also want to be careful that we're not throwing campuses into a position of being in the spotlight with their peers. So we'll tread carefully with that, knowing that that's very important, but that group may or may not specifically themselves look at campuses. That may be something that Mr. Kosh and I and the chiefs look more closely at.
And I assume then that the disciplinary committee will be looking then to make recommendations for the district improvement plan based on those findings? Absolutely, based on guidance from Dr. Rapp and where your priorities and her priorities are, we will be here to support however that relates to behavior management. We'll be excited to work on those. And it sounds like a large committee. I believe we have 31 people. That's a bit larger than the answer. We're calling it a team as opposed to a committee, and so there'll be, I anticipate that there'll be a lot of small group work within that team because we're going to have elementary, middle, and high school. And while there's some overarching issues that are important for everyone, there's also going to be some breakdown work where we focus on the needs of each level. And this year, everybody will be trained. By the end of this year, everybody, because by the cohorts, this is it. Yeah, we have one campus, Delay, who has not had the training yet, and they are the only campus, and we're working with Ms. Upshaw to make sure that we get that taken care of. All right, thank you.
Dr. Bonner.
one of my questions was on who hasn't been trained, so thank you for addressing that. And
I should also add, sorry, Lily, we're not doing Lily because theirs is, what they do is a little different.
The other thing that's going through my mind is the work that was done several years ago. And I would offer, even though I can't prove it up with statistics, that the work done on disproportionality has diminished. That's a long-term issue, though. It needs to continue to diminish, and we all know that. So I'm appreciative of the work there that's gotten to this point, but we're not finished, correct?
Agreed.
Also, another portion of that data from way back when, and I didn't see it referenced here, I hope we look at racial and socioeconomic profiles both, because that was also something that came up in that. And so I'm encouraged that the, the district discipline leadership team, we said we were going to have ongoing support and oversight. I'm hopeful that that is regular and frequent dipsticking of data, maybe a quarter, maybe a semester, whatever your plan is, to look at those areas so we can get some good feedback back and continue to see a downward trend.
Yes, sir. And to answer that, I would say absolutely data is going to be a big focus, and ongoing data, working to really see where we want to pinpoint, because you can easily be overwhelmed with the amount of data. I mean, we were swimming in spreadsheets with all of this, trying to figure out what was most relevant and valuable, and so we'll help drill that down for them. But then also speaking to your other question about socioeconomics, and that is also some of the data that we've already pulled and are looking at, and has been an area of concern. When I've talked with the campuses at Thrive each year about disproportionality, that has been an area that I identified for them as well, because it is of significant concern to us.
On the district developed campus management plan you all have in mind, and I'm probably getting ahead of the ball game here, but I won't even ask a question. I'll just say what I'm hopeful for. How about that? Each campus, there needs to be a district standard, no question about that. Hopefully it's a range, right, where campuses have some discretion to address things. I hope we don't get into a cookie-cutter approach where you must do this. There's a range of opportunities and consequences for misbehavior, so I'll just leave it at that.
I would like to speak to that, though,
Yeah.
just if I can. I'm 100% in agreement with that. I've worked very hard for the last few years to try to take us away from a cookie-cutter approach, because I think that keeps administrators from being able to meet kids where they are. So we will, of course, be working for like that standard across the district, kind of our non-negotiables, and also guidance, and then still leave that room for campuses to do what's right for the kids that are sitting in front of them.
Thank you.
One thing I just I'd like to echo the thanks for the team. Thank you all for thanking them, too, for gathering that data. I know you all had asked, and this had come up about, is there a correlation between mobility rates and discipline and socioeconomic and discipline? And I think that, the team is probably grown a little bit even since the initial responses, just as we think about the district staff, too, that will sit on that team with them. But I do believe it's important to emphasize that one of the things we have seen over the last 3 years with COVID is the behaviors of our students have been impacted by the trauma that has been experienced in society. And the work that our assistant principals and our principals are doing, what I continue to hear from them is that every conversation about a behavior, need, or incident's taking longer than it has in the past. The conversations in supporting the parents, because often discipline is a family conversation. What did we do? How can it be a learning experience? Because the ultimate goal is that we don't see a repeat of that behavior again. I think when I think about Rocky being here tonight to talk about birth rates, and one of the things we know is that what children experience in the utero actually impacts them. Trauma impacts our children in ways that we cannot quantify with data. We have not even begun to see what the impact of what we all have experienced over these last several years will do to students who haven't yet even come to our school buildings. They're going to be that kindergarten class of 2024, 2025. So this conversation is long from over, right? What we're doing now to address the needs of our students who started kindergarten and are now the graduating class of 2023, it isn't the exact same thing that will be needed for those incoming kindergarten students. And I just have to say from my heart that, you know, this is something that we will have to continue to work on as we work to study what our families have experienced, what our students have experienced, and we are committed to working with our families through the needs that their students bring to us because our most important thing is that kids are able to learn and they're ready to graduate and can be successful when they walk that stage. And so I would just be remiss if I didn't say we have a lot of work still to do that we don't even know yet because we haven't seen the students that have been most impacted by COVID over the last 3 years. So.
Thank you, Dr. Rapp, for sharing that. I think it's a profound point, and thank you, Mrs. Clark and Mr. Kaj. I agree as well on the SES side. I think that we had a couple years ago a speaker come in and say it doesn't matter what happens outside the schoolhouse. It only matters what happens in the schoolhouse. And no other environment, no other society, no other culture would one say that it doesn't matter what happens elsewhere. It only matters what happens when a kid or adult is in this building because it happens with adults. And we've seen these problems cross socioeconomic boundaries, zip codes, color, and what I would say is that there is some possible linkage to SES issues, or if we were to rephrase it, when kids are hungry, tired, sick, scared, or don't come to school, they can come to school in a way that is not there to learn, but with some desperation. And that, again, transcends skin color and socioeconomics. There are kids who are wealthy and come to school hangry, ready for a fight. And this is a very difficult thing for us to discuss because we see national numbers, we see local numbers, and everybody wants it to get to a certain point. And yet it really covers a broad spectrum of students. You know, in most areas, we would say if it's how are kids doing on third grade language services, reading, we would say, well, we need to look at what's the mobility. We would ask that question. We might even ask that question when we do tips tonight. What's the mobility at your campus? Mobility is a factor. What is happening in a home is a factor. And again, it transcends skin color. And so those types of things that happen and the importance of programs like what we have in social services, and Monia's group and other groups are important for us to help families and educate them on to try to create this whole child. I think that gets incorporated into this as well. So I appreciate the work and the research that I think you're going to be delving into here as we move forward. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to consider approval of the annual my most favorite reports. Ms. Maloney, you can do the financial report and including the bond report and the monthly investment report. How could I forget that?
Thank you, Mr.
That's all
Miller.
I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. President Rapp, members of the board, this is for the second month of the fiscal year ending October 31st, 2022. When we get to February, we'll have those December financials that we'll start to see those property taxes coming in, and that will coincide for the general fund and the debt service fund, that will coincide with the forecast update that we'll be delivering to you for the 22-23 fiscal year. So good times coming ahead in the new year financial forecasts. I would say on the Child Nutrition Fund, we do have a long way to go on that spend down plan, and we will have our report on that particular area at the January regular meeting. On page 190 for our federal funds, just a note, We carry our grants in this report because they are within the fiscal year, so we have a lot of grants that close out in September, but we carry them all year long. And so sometimes it looks like that our expenditures to date are halfway there. Well, that is because we're carrying those over from the previous year. And so that was one thing I noticed this time after all these time doing the financials, and I was like, what is that? But we are carrying that 1 month, which shows the full expense. Moving over to page 194, this is our new way to report on our bond reporting, and then what that does is nicely puts all of the items in their line item and where we are with the spending in that line item. And then on page 195, our investment report, October and November will be our lowest months for our ending book value, but we'll start to see that pick up in December as our taxes come in. I would point out that in the last year at this time, at the October report, we earned $25,000 in interest income, and we're earning more, of course, because of these higher rates that we're seeing in these times. And so with that, that is the monthly financial report.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Before we go to the next item, Ms. Maloney, I just want to recognize your cube mate over there. It's her birthday, and she has nothing on the agenda, and so we might as well recognize her now. It's Sheila Smith's birthday.
Thank you.
So way to put her up at the dais on that one. Look at what happens with that. So happy birthday to you. All right, Ms. Maloney, next.
All right, so we've got the legislative update next. I'll get this started, and then I know Ms. Maloney's going to help me this time with this. And ultimately, we'll bring a legislative update forward every month. We will all probably take different roles in talking about the legislative update, depending on what we're talking about that's going on at the time. So tonight, it'll be me and Paige talking through some things. As I mentioned earlier in the superintendent update, although I should have said Wednesday the 14th, I think it said Wednesday the 15th, that's just coming to me now, but Wednesday the 14th, we will have that elected official visit. And I want to say thank you to Amanda Brim and the communications team and Dr. Miller for all of their work on preparing for the legislative visit. I saw the printed package of materials today. You know, one of the things that we've done in addition to your legislative priorities is we've put together legislative stories with additional information about the priorities. We will reference that throughout our time with the elected officials in the presentation. They'll get to hear from Dr. Fitzhugh. They'll get to hear from Ms. Maloney. They'll get to hear from Mr. Garrett. And they will also get to hear from Mr. Baker and Allison Stamey and our students at LHS. They'll get to hear from Ms. Ullman, principal of Southridge Elementary, and of course Alexis Miller, our State Teacher of the Year finalist several years ago. And so I'm really excited about the program that we have for them, and of course we will be tackling together the community engagement legislative priorities, so you all be thinking when we get to that section of the presentation with them on that day, what you want to share about community engagement. Of course, there will be a question and answer time woven throughout that time with them, and all of us together can provide any answers to the questions that they ask on every segment. But I'm just excited about the new and different format, and I appreciate all of the elected officials that will be with us and their staff on that day. And so with that said, I'll turn it over to Ms. Maloney to hit a couple of other things related to the legislative update.
Just real quick, and I've provided some of these in the update, the summary and categorization of bills that have been filed thus far. Out of the gate, the most bills have been filed around the topic of property taxes, and some issues there are things about limiting annual growth on appraisal values, more compression, and then adding exemptions, new exemptions, expanded exemptions, revised exemptions, and I think you probably have seen Dan Patrick talking about that in the news. On school finance area, a lot of bills filed out there on increasing the basic allotment, some things out there on enrollment-based funding, and that increased funding for specific programs. That's going to be especially in the area of special education because of the work that's been done between the two sessions. On personnel, across-the-board pay raises is in there, and then some interesting bills on providing full-day pre-K to children of teachers. School choice, we've got some vouchers and education savings accounts, restrictions on charter school expansion. Last Friday, the House Education Chair, Harold Dutton, sat alongside Representative Van Dever at the TAMS conference and pretty much communicated that the votes weren't there for the vouchers to pass in the House. And he said that there should be a focus on student outcomes and teacher pay instead of dollars diverted from the system. So that was pretty good news there. And the one other thing that I reported about in the update that we're watching very closely is that biennial state spending limit. The Legislative Budget Board did come together and said that they could spend 12.3% as an estimated growth rate, just like the Texas economy is growing. And so, reminder, that would equate to 12.5 that they would be able to spend in this biennium. Reminder, we're looking at a $27 billion surplus, probably going to be more than that. It's going to be north of 30. So with the spending cap, the legislature would be unable to spend this entire surplus. So let's think about some of the things you have to think about. If that is well below $14 billion that Governor Abbott promised on the campaign trail to use for property tax relief. And the Lieutenant Governor said that he would not be supporting exceeding or busting the tax spending cap. But to exceed that cap, you have to have a majority vote in both chambers. So we're watching this pretty closely because, just to provide some context, a $500 increase in the basic allotment would cost roughly $7.3 billion. And if you can only spend 12.5, there are a lot of areas in our state that are going to be, that have needs not only just in education.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I've got the next one. Mr. Garrett's coming up to talk about our monthly report on district-wide intruder detection audit report findings.
Good evening. We had, in the month of November, state auditors conduct intruder detection audits at Flyer Mound High School, the Lewisville Learning Center, Bluebonnet Elementary, Bridlewood Elementary, Valley Ridge Elementary, and Indian Creek Elementary. Any corrective action plans have been reviewed and approved by the LISD Safety and Security Committee. All corrective actions have been completed prior to this board meeting, and we'll be ready for a report in December for the ones that have happened already this month. So, any questions?
Matt, thank you for all your work on this. Really appreciate it. Okay, we're going to consider approval of an annual comprehensive financial report. It's hard to not call that a CAFR, honestly, but for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2021. Ms. Maloney, do we want to discuss that first or have a motion?
We have Ms. Selena Saracetis here from Whitley Penn for the presentation.
Yeah, you want to do that before the motion? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, President Miller, Dr. Rapp, and members of the board. We are here to present the results of the fiscal year 22 audit. And as we were discussing tonight, just a reminder that this is a snapshot as of August 31st, 22, and any activity is from September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2022. Our opinion in these financial statements are so that the users can make informed decisions. It's not an assessment of the economic well-being of the district. It simply is saying if you need to use these financial statements, whether you're a regulatory agency, a rating agency, or simply a community user, you can rely on the financial statements. We do provide reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, because that would require 100% testing, and with human error, that's not possible even within any entity's operation. So our assurance is reasonable, and we're saying that our opinion is indicating that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. In order to reach our opinion, we have to go through various steps, and our planning began in the late spring, early summer months. We came out in the field in June, July timeframe, gained an understanding of your key controls, tested those key controls in various areas that we'll see here in a moment. We tested those controls and compliance over state transactions, state compliance transactions, as well as federal transactions as well. After the district closed its books on August 31st, 2022, about 45 days later, we came back on site and we began our substantive testing. That includes corroborating, vouching, confirming, and where inquiry and analytics alone are not sufficient. All of this was in an effort to issue our opinion. There's 3 types of opinions that you can earn, and if you notice I use the word earn because it is quite a process, and you prepare for this year-round to ensure that all the transactions are correct and that the controls are in place so that you have assurance that the figures are going to be correct at the end of the year. So kudos to Lewisville ISD for once again earning a clean report or an unmodified opinion. In addition to generally accepted auditing standards, we do audit under another level of auditing standards called generally accepted government auditing standards because you do spend more than $750,000 in federal funds. Under these standards, we're required to report on internal controls over financial reporting and then also assess whether you had any noncompliance with state regulations, such as the Public Funds Investment Act, procurement, or even with your state special allotments. There are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report over financial reporting, and we didn't have any noncompliance to report. I mentioned earlier that you do spend over $750,000. In fact, you spent $70 million this year in federal grants. And every year we rotate the programs that we audit. The larger programs, which are your Type A programs, are typically your Title I, child nutrition, special education, and right after COVID, we began receiving the tranches of the ESSER funding, and so ESSER will be with us until ESSER 3 is exhausted in a year or two. This year, we tested Title I Part A. It was up in the rotation. Impact Aid was also tested, with ESSER funds being the largest, tested at $18.8 million. And then ELC Reopening Schools, which is also the school health grant. And ELC stands for Epidemiology and Laboratory Capacity, and that was new this year. And it's coming from Health and Human Services Department, but TEA worked in conjunction with the State Department as well. The Type A, Type B threshold was $2.1 million, and that is the product of your total schedule of expenditures of federal awards multiplied by 3%, and that threshold changes every year. And again, it's based on the level of expenditures. I mentioned earlier that when we came on site, we looked at internal controls, and these are the areas that we focus on. We not only conduct a walkthrough, but we also identify those key controls and test the controls over human resources, payroll, purchasing, accounts payable, IT, PEMS, and we have an attendance focus because we know that average daily attendance drives your state aid. And so we really look at the attendance process for that attendance period that drives ADA. And state aid. And then we also looked at the controls over your federal programs that I just discussed earlier. So we tested your general payroll, general non-payroll, and we used teammate analytics to select samples and also identify risky transactions, and then we address those transactions if the system identifies any of those transactions. Then we do separate federal and federal payroll and federal non-payroll testing as well. We look at procurement. We look at Public Funds Investment Act, as I mentioned earlier. We look at your campus improvement plan. We do the PEMS walkthrough and attendance testing at different campuses, and we rotate the campuses that we visit or that we select for testing. We also look at the child nutrition receipts because that's a higher risk area. Anytime there's cash collected, we need to make sure that we ensure that controls are in place. In the year that child nutrition is a major federal program, we increased the sample size. This year we tested 25 since it was not a major program. We also look at the state allotments. We look at transactions, expenditure transactions, but after the close of the year, we ensure that you're spending the required percentages that the state requires of you, such as the career and technology, bilingual ed, state comp ed, et cetera. And this year you have a new schedule where the state is requiring auditors to look at your bilingual ed and state comp ed policies and procedures and then report what percentage or what was the amount of those specific allotments that you spent during the current year. And so TEA is going to take those expenditures, place it in its database, and see where you fared in comparison to the allotments. So again, we are issuing an unmodified opinion on those federal programs that we listed a few slides back, those 4 programs. Those results are also listed on page 146 of the annual comprehensive financial report. No internal control or compliance findings to report related to those federal programs. Any questions before we get into the financial statement highlights? Okay. You have 2 sets of financial statements presented within the ACFR. And the first one is the government-wide financial statements. Those are presented on the accrual basis of accounting. This is the basis of accounting that you would see in a corporation, and it reports all of the assets and all of the liabilities that the district owns and owes respectively. So this year, your assets and deferred outflows, the outflows are considered like quasi-assets. Those totaled $1.9 billion, and then you had total liabilities and deferred inflows or quasi-liabilities, which totaled $1.8 billion. You have a net position or net worth of $165 million. If we dissect what is included in those financial statements at the government-wide level, you'll see that your cash and investments totaled $431 million, and that decreased by $83.5 million. We'll see that you had your capital projects fund cash decrease because you issued bonds in previous years and you were spending down those projects, and that totaled about $70 million. In the debt service fund, you had a cash defeasance, which is always a positive thing. You increase your debt service fund balance, and then you use that to pay down the debt, which is a responsible thing to do. Your capital assets totaled $1.4 billion out of that $1.8 million, and that's net of accumulated depreciation, and those decreased by $5.4 million. So although you may have added new assets, depreciation was greater than those assets. And then you also had bonds payable and related items on the liability side, which totaled $1.3 billion, and that was out of the $1.8 billion we just saw. Those decreased by $155 million. That includes that $38 million defeasance plus the regularly scheduled principal payments on the outstanding debt. The next 2 items are large estimates, and these liabilities are actuarially determined by TRS's, or the Teacher Retirement System of Texas actuaries. The net pension liability totaled $70 million, and then the OPEB liability totaled a little under $144 million. You'll see that if you compare year over year that the net pension liability decreased by $50 million, and that's primarily related to the positive projected investment earnings that TRS experienced between September 1st, 2020 through August 31st, 2021. The data that we receive from TRS is always 1 year behind because the fiscal years are the same. So both June 30th and August 31st, school districts have to wait until the next year to use the TRS reports. The net OPEB liability did increase by $4.3 million. The liability increased statewide, and then your proportionate share increased slightly. The net position increased by $88.6 million, which is always a positive thing. When we get into the fund financial statements, you'll see that it's a different basis of accounting. The governmental fund financial statements are on a modified accrual basis, and that reports all of the current resources and the current uses of those resources. But if you're interested in the reconciliation between the two, those are presented on pages 23 and 26. I do want to provide us some reminders on the pension and OPEB liabilities. we saw those large amounts, but remember that those are just your proportionate share of the state's overall liability. It doesn't mean that you have to write a check for $70 million or $143 million like we see with accounts payable or even your bonds payable. So those liabilities are not cash liabilities. And so you'll continue to pay into TRS at those statutorily determined rates every year, and those are changing. And so the state has to make those determinations on how they're going to reduce those liabilities, and they could increase the employer, the employee rate, or change the benefits that come with that pension. But again, it's not something that you have to budget in the general fund. You only budget for those statutorily determined payments that have to be made every year. And also, TRS is very well funded as well. It's anywhere between 75 to in the mid-80s funded. So the likelihood of TRS failing is very low, so we don't have to worry about that. So again, just a reminder, when you see those large numbers, it's nothing to worry about unless TRS were to fail, and we don't see that happening. When we move over into the general fund financial statements and we dissect the revenues, we'll see that the revenues totaled $518.5 million. And the largest portion that makes up those revenues are your property tax revenues at $431.7 million. The second largest portion is your state aid, or your per capita and foundation school program. Again, ADA drives that, plus all the allotments that are included in that. That totaled $32.5 million. I do want to point out that you do have the TRS on behalf, but there is an expenditure offset by that same amount of $26.2 million. So there's no effect on fund balance. However, under governmental accounting standards, we do have to report this on behalf payment to show the users of the financial statements that TRS has contributed this particular amount on behalf of the employees of Lewisville ISD at the state level. You also have federal revenue called SHARS, or the School Health and Related Services, which totaled $6.5 million. Then you have other federal revenue totaling $8.4 million. That includes indirect costs coming from various grants, plus any other ESSER funds that are included in that account, plus impact aid, which is always accounted for in the general fund. And then you have your other revenue sources at $14.6 million as well. And just a reminder, with Lewisville ISD being a recapture school district, there's always that inverse relationship between property taxes and state aid. And based on the state aid formula, the more property taxes you collect, the more that your state aid decreases. And you'll see here year after year what state aid is doing. And I believe in just a few years ago, you all had to pay recapture, and we'll see here in a few slides what that looks like as well. Your general fund expenditures totaled $539.3 million, and the largest portion is instruction and related services. But with that recapture, $45.2 million of your expenditures has to go back to the state to the tune of $45.2 million, or 9% of your total expenditures. We work with other recapture districts, and that's a point of frustration for them, because that's 9% that could have been allocated elsewhere, specifically to instruction or to other areas that are needed. But again, based on the state aid formula, you don't have any choice, and it's based on the property wealth and the property taxes that you collect. And so you take those property taxes and you have to return them to the state. In addition to that, your state aid is also reduced proportionally based on that formula. I also want to point out that the third and fourth largest categories are instructional and school leadership at 44.5, and then facilities, maintenance, and operations at $42 million. And if we go to the second to the last bullet, general administration is at $12 million. And what TEA looks at, as we saw earlier in the first rating, they also aggregate your school administration at the campus level, and then divide it by the instructional functional expenditures. But again, we work with over 40 school districts, and the norm is to be at 2 to 3%. We see 3%, but you're below what we normally see with other school districts, again, in that general administration category. Here's your recapture amounts, and you'll see that starting in 2019, that amount was $29.9 million, and then it decreased a bit in 2020 in the middle of COVID, and then it spiked up to $50.7 million just last year. Some hold harmless amounts were included in there as well. And this year, it seems like it dropped, but it was around September 8th that the state held districts harmless. And with recapture districts, instead of increasing the actual state aid, that $32 million that we saw, they'll decrease your recapture. And so that recapture was really closer to the $50 million that you saw last year. And you can see that in the run IDs that the Summary of Finances shows on there, and it was around September 8th that they decreased that recapture amount. When we look at your expenditures by object, you'll see that the majority of your expenditures goes to payroll. About 71% of all the costs are payroll. But then look again, recapture, just for accounting purposes, the $45.2 million is typically included with contracted services because it is a 6,200. But we broke it out just so that it could stand on its own again, so that it's not overshadowed by the other contracted services. So I think that's important for you all to see as well, where you would just see contracted services at $100 million. Well, almost half of that goes towards recapture. When we look at your budget that you adopted and then amended throughout the year, you'll see that the total actual revenues came under budget by $34 million. And again, that's the reclassifications that you didn't adjust for due to ESSER. And that's why, for first rating purposes, you're not being rated on that particular indicator. When we look at the expenditures, they came in under budget by $42.6 million, and then your fund balance did decrease by $20.6 million. Your fund balance as of August 31st, 22 totaled $150 million, and then you have non-spendable fund balance, which is made up of your prepaids and inventory, and those are non-spendable because they're not convertible to cash. Your assigned fund balance, you have a board policy that you must retain up to 3 months, at least 3 months of expenditures in assigned fund balance. And a few years ago, you moved it from committed to assigned because the first rating changed. TEA is looking at the assigned and unassigned categories together to evaluate particular indicators or to rate you for those indicators. Then you have unassigned fund balance at $14.6 million, and that equates to an additional 10 days. So you have the 90 days or the 3 months plus the 10 days of expenditures for a total of 100 days. The optimal fund balance is anywhere from 75 to 90 days, so you're well above that optimal fund balance, and it allows you to pivot when the district needs to for additional recapture, for budget shortfalls. We don't know what the 88th legislature will bring, but it allows you to do that. And we're facing that funding cliff after ESSER is exhausted, and you'll have to make decisions with those funding sources that you have available in the general fund. We'll also look at the last two funds that you do adopt a budget for, the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program, as well as the Debt Service Fund. The Child Nutrition Program brought in $28.7 million, and the majority of this are the reimbursements you receive from the federal government for those children that qualify for free and reduced lunches. That came under budget by $1.9 million. On the expenditure side, those totaled $22 million, and they came under budget by $8.6 million. Your ending fund balance, your fund balance increased by $6.8 million, and you have an ending fund balance of $14.2 million. Where we were just looking at the general fund and TEA wants you to have 75 to 90 days, the Texas Department of Agriculture says you must not have more than 3 months fund balance in this particular fund. If you do, you have to submit a spending plan, which the district did, and they have a year to spend that down and reinvest into the child nutrition program. Districts are not allowed to send it back to the general fund. It must stay in the child nutrition program. On the debt service side, remember you levy a tax to pay down your principal and then the interest that's due on your outstanding bonds. Those totaled $179.3 million. You have a little bit of the existing debt allotment coming from the state, but the majority is property taxes. Those were more than the budgeted amounts by $300,000. And then you have expenditures totaling $192.2 million, which came under budget by $17.3 million. Your fund balance decreased by $12.8 million. And remember that you had that cash defeasance of $38 million. So overall, your ending fund balance was $49.5 million. Again, that is where you need to be on the restricted debt service, and you can't do anything with that fund balance other than pay down the principal on the debt and interest as well. Any questions for me?
Sheila?
I had a question. First, I wanted to make a comment that says the clean opinion is definitely a testament to Paige and her staff and all of the hard work that they've done with recording transactions and meeting all of the compliance requirements for the various programs. So I think that that's amazing, and also the report on the internal controls. My question is, and I've been out of public accounting for a while, is I know we don't have any corrective actions because there were no weaknesses and we have a clean opinion, but do auditors still provide maybe recommendations around some of our processes that we can use to improve?
We sure do, and when we complete the audit, we'll have an exit conference, and anything that would rise to the level where we would have to issue the management comment letters. But we didn't have that this year. What we've been working with Lewisville is spending those bilingual ed and state comp ed allotments, and that has been for the last few years, but your team has made a concerted effort to focus on those, especially knowing that the J4 was coming around. But we typically don't. It's a very smooth audit for us, given the size of the district. It's a really smooth audit considering, again, the complexity, the recapture, the federal programs, and all the moving parts, especially with ESSER. Yes, ma'am.
My questions are a little bit more about Whitney Penn. When was this audit? When was this report completed?
It was completed. I think it was completed on Wednesday, and then we met with the audit committee on Thursday.
So I'm just getting it tonight. Is that standard? Because I've received this report before the board meeting before.
We did put it in board book. That's correct.
We put the presentation in board book.
Not the report. The report was not in board book.
Okay. Well, we sent the PDF, right? But
it was Thursday morning. We had it Thursday morning. Yeah.
In the future, I'd like it more than 10 minutes before my board meeting.
Selena, I think you did an outstanding job, regardless of the timing of the report. Followed our processes. And once again, thank you for a clean report. We had a first read the other day. It was a good first read. Who was there? You were there with me, right? Allison couldn't make it. And so I appreciate the cadence by which you walk through the report and the items that you call out that are important to our community, and the way that they can absorb what you said in a codified way and take that with them. So thank you very much, and we appreciate you guys. Hassett.
I'm going to make just one comment, just in case anybody took it. You said thank you for a clean report. She didn't give us a clean report. We earned a clean report. I just wanted to make that for sure.
Let me be clear.
I know what you meant.
Thank you for identifying that we had a clean report. And I know the words clean and testing are all very important usage at the right time. I'm not that person, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, I'd like to make a motion.
There you go.
Well, you're welcome to make a motion.
Thank you, thank you. I move that the board approve the annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2022.
Ms. Taylor. Okay, any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? 6 with an abstention. All right, next item, Ms. Maloney.
This is for the consideration of approval of a renewal of our delinquent tax collection attorney services. We have Jordan Stinson and Cheryl Knighton from Linebarger Firm here this evening. Just a reminder that the cost for collecting the delinquent taxes is paid by the taxpayer and not an expense for the district. A reminder on this, as we discussed in the work session, that real property becomes delinquent on July 1st and the 20% contingent.
Ms. Maloney, real quickly, we've got the surplus property ahead of, it was at the bottom of that page, so I think just skipped.
Okay, got it.
Let's
Yeah,
go back
yes. Sorry about that. The considering approval of a resolution to declare and designate one LISD real property as surplus property and authorize its advertisement and sale. We currently have one property that the district does not anticipate using for future educational purposes and is no longer necessary for district operations. The sale of the surface estate of this property will provide additional revenue to the district and eliminate the need to maintain the property. If we move to sell this property, the president of the Board of Trustees shall execute a deed to the purchaser of the property reciting a resolution of the Board of Trustees authorizing the sale. So what we need to consider here by the resolution in open session is that we would determine that the property listed on Exhibit A is no longer necessary for district operations and thus is a surplus property. Authorize the advertisement and sale of the property in accordance with applicable board policy and state law, and it authorizes the district's administration, if needed, to work with the awarded real estate broker for the sale of surplus real property as it pertains to notice and bidding requirements in accordance with applicable policy and law. And the recommendation below would carry this out.
Thank you, Ms. Maloney. Do I have a motion? Ms. Hassett.
I move that the board approve a resolution declaring and designating the real property listed in the resolution under Exhibit A as surplus property of the district, authorizing its advertisement and sale, and authorizes the executive staff to take any and all appropriate action in regard to the sale of the property.
Have a second? Ms. Sells? Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, next item.
Okay, and again, thank you to Jordan Stinson and Cheryl Knighton for being here from the Linebarger Firm. So just a reminder that real property becomes delinquent on July 1st, and that process starts on July 1st for unpaid property taxes. These are specialized legal services. This would be for a final 3-year renewal with Linebarger, Gogan, Blair, and Sampson, with a sharing agreement fee with the LZ law firm. And Linebarger and LZ have represented LISD for approximately the past 6 years, and other Texas government entities for 40 years. And they are compensated on a contingent fee basis as provided in the Texas tax code. And so what this recommendation would do tonight is approve this second and last extension of this contract.
Thank you, Ms. Maloney.
Good through March 31st, 2026.
Mm-hmm. And we had Corey here from Linebarger and Chuck here from LC this week at our work session, or last week. So do I have a motion? Ms. Sells.
I move that the board approve the motion to exercise the second extension of the original contract with the Linebarger Law Firm and LC Law Firm, approve findings related to contingent fee contracts, and grant superintendent board president authority to sign or acknowledge all necessary documents.
Do I have a second? Ms. Taylor? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. Okay. Dr. Miller. Academic calendar, wow.
Yes, thank you, President Miller. So before I share results, I did want to just do a little reminder that this year, remember, we did a survey at the beginning of this process and got over 6,000 results for that. And then we sent a second survey out once we had the 4 options and had almost 5,000 responses for that. So based on the rating, option A received the highest rating from both groups, staff, we divided staff and parents to see if there was any big significant difference in that. So option A received 33% of first vote. When you combine first and second preferences, then it was 63%. Option B was second to that. The only difference between option A and B is the winter break. So we are recommending option A since that was the preference for both groups. This calendar does require the professional learning waiver, which y'all approved in consent. So,
Do I have a motion or discussion?
I'll make a motion, then we can discuss it if we want to. Yeah.
Dr. Bonner?
I move that the board approve option A for the 2023-24 school year calendar as recommended by administration.
Do I have a second? Ms. Prosnick? Any discussion? Dr. Bonner? Oh, you want to go first, too?
I don't really have anything, no.
Oh, I did have something really quick to say, which is I appreciate that in this district we survey our community and we ask their opinion. There are surrounding districts who do not. So I appreciate those who participated in the survey, and I appreciate administration always giving our public an opportunity to have a voice on the calendar.
Outstanding. Any other discussion? All right, with no further discussion, all in favor say aye by signifying with your right hand. Yep. Any opposed? Right hand. Any opposed? 7-0. All right, Dr. Rapp.
All right, I want to say thank you to Ms. Litchfield and Jamie Clark and Chantel Upshaw, who have presented on the TIP plans. But most importantly, I want to say thank you to our 3 principals that are sitting back there with us through this whole entire meeting. Thank you all so much. We are so proud of Mill Street, Huffines, and Durham Middle School, and I know the work that you all have done on these TIP plans. As we believe in Lewisville ISD, we're not going to do work on a plan because of what the state is telling us to do. We're always going to do what is best for kids, and you have 3 plans before you that ultimately do what is best for children, not just something that's required for a state-mandated test. And I thank you for your leadership, and we look forward to where you will go from here with your work on these plans.
I move.
Take some time here.
Hurry. Can I move?
Yes,
okay.
hurry.
Slowly.
Hurry. Hurry.
I move that the board approve the 2022-23 targeted improvement plans for Mill Street Elementary School, Huffines Middle School, and Durham Middle School as presented by administration.
Behind you. See, I didn't even have my mic on. All right, so a lot of people watching out for me. Thank you. Keep up the good work. If there's no further discussion, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to take a vote. All in favor say aye by raising your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. If there is no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 9:27 p.m. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you.